Okay, revision of trigonometry. Right, remember, trigonometry only applies to right angle triangles. So if you have a shape that looks something like this, right, okay, there is three triangles here, right? So there's the small right angle triangle, okay, there's the big right angle triangle, and then there's this triangle here. Right, this is not right angle triangle, so you cannot use this triangle, okay? So you can only work in the right angle triangles. Remember that for trigonometry, okay? So when you're working on your triangle, you need to know three pieces of information, right? Where one of the pieces of information is the right angle. So you need to know the right angle plus any two other pieces of information. Okay, if you were given two sides and asked to find the third side, use Pythagoras' theorem. So if you're given your right angle triangle, so there's information number one, it's a right angle, right? Okay, and if they tell you this side measures 3, this side measures 4, and they said find x, find the measure of this. So there's no angles involved, it's just the three sides. That's Pythagoras' theorem. So remember, the hypotenuse is the line straight across from the right angle, right? And then the hypotenuse squared is equal to the other two sides squared, right? A squared plus b squared. Doesn't matter which one you call A, which one you call B, no. Right, so that means x squared is equal to 3 squared plus 4 squared. Into the calculator with that, you'll get x squared is equal to 25. So x is equal to the square root of 25, which is 5. So Pythagoras' theorem comes into right angle triangles. Okay? Now, if you are given an angle or asked to find an angle, use SOHCAHTOA, right? So if you have your right angle triangle, okay, and just say they tell us this angle here measures 40, okay, and this side measures 10, right, and they say find x. Okay, so this time we can't use Pythagoras' theorem, because in order to use Pythagoras' theorem you have to know two sides and be looking for the third, right? So that means we use SOHCAHTOA. Now, before we get to what SOHCAHTOA means, right, let's label our triangle, okay? So remember, the hypotenuse never moves. So the hypotenuse is always straight across from the right angle. So the hypotenuse never moves. The opposite and the adjacent depend on which angle you're talking about. So in this case, right, the 40 is here. So adjacent means besides, so x is besides, so this is the adjacent, and this line is opposite, so that's the opposite. Okay, whereas if you had a triangle, okay, and they told you the 40 was up here, right, and this is the right angle, this is the hypotenuse, right, but now this is the adjacent, because this is the side beside the angle, and this is the opposite. So the opposite and the adjacent move around depending on what angle they tell us. The hypotenuse never moves. Okay, so then 3 examples now, right? Okay, so where you're given a right angle triangle and you're looking for one side, right? Okay, so it's not Pythagoras' theorem, because Pythagoras' theorem you have to know two sides in order to work on the triangle. Here we don't, so we're going for SOHCAHTOA. Okay, SOHCAHTOA. And remember, SOHCAHTOA is 3 formulas in one. Sine is opposite divided by hypotenuse. Cos of an angle is adjacent divided by hypotenuse. Tan of the angle is opposite over adjacent. Right, step 1, label. Okay, so the hypotenuse is straight across from the right angle. We're talking about this angle here, so the x is beside it, so that means adjacent, and this is opposite. Okay, so you know the angle, so therefore you know the sine of the angle, the cos of the angle, and the tan of the angle. Right, you know the hypotenuse, it measures 10, so we know h, it measures 10. Right, okay, and we're looking for the adjacent, so the adjacent, I'm going to put a question mark on the adjacent. Okay, they don't tell us the opposite and they don't ask us to find the opposite, so we've no interest in opposite. So you pick the formula that has 2 ticks and a question mark. So I'm picking cos. So cos is a over h. So it has to be cos of the angle. So cos of 40 is equal to A is x and h measures 10. Now, if the x is on top, right, okay, all you do is cross multiply. So 1 by x equals 10 multiplied by cos 40 into the calculator with that and press equals. Okay, right, that's that one. I'm not, you can put it into the calculator there yourself. Right, example 2, this one. So I know the 32, so that means the x is the hypotenuse, the x is opposite the 32, and this line here is beside the 32. Right, they don't tell us and they don't ask us. So you write down SOHCAHTOA. They've told me what the angle measures. So the angle measures 32, so that means I can get sine of 32, cos of 32, or tan of 32, depending on which one I want. Right, I know the opposite, so I know O and O, and I'm looking for the hypotenuse. So I'm going to put a question mark on the hypotenuse. So they don't tell me the adjacent, they don't ask me about the adjacent, so the sine is the one where I have 2 ticks and a question mark. So sine equals over h. So it has to be sine of the angle, sine of 32 equals O, which is 8, over h, which is x. Now, when the x ends up underneath the line, all you do is you swap the sine 32 with the x. So x is equal to 8 divided by sine 32. So you just swap the x and the sine 32. So this time you're dividing. Right, so I'll leave you put that into the calculator there yourselves and press equals. Okay, and the third type of example is, right, if you're missing the angle. Right, so the right angle is up here, so this is the hypotenuse down from it, this is the angle we're talking about, so this is beside it, this is the adjacent, and this is the opposite. Okay, so SOHCAHTOA. Now this time I don't know the angle, I'm looking to find the angle. So that means I'm looking for the sine of the angle, the cos of the angle, or the tan of the angle, depending on what other information I have. Right? I have the opposite and A, so I have O and A, so O and A. Right? They don't tell me the hypotenuse, they don't ask me about it, so I'm going to use tan. So tan of the angle, so tan equals over A. So that means it's tan of angle A is equal to the opposite, which is 5 over 4. Right? When you're missing the angle, you have to get the inverse tan, it's called. Right? So on your calculator, you press shift and then press the 10 button. Then you put in your fraction 5 over 4 and equals, and that'll give you your answer. So when you're missing the angle, it's shift and sine, cos or tan, depending on the example. Okay, and that's trigonometry summed up.